everybody, it's Miss Phoebus again, and this is Lesson 9, Solving Absolute Value Equations. Now, like I have been in the last few videos, I'm going to do a little side track thing and show you something else I wanted you to see. So in Canvas, I wanted to show you in modules, I've updated something. I had it in module 0 earlier. It was embedded in, I think, the communication expectations, but now I've added it down here for tutoring help. So if you need extra help and you want to do a Google Meet with somebody, these are all the math teachers that have made themselves available. So all you have to do is go to DCHS Math Help. Actually, you go to meet.google.com and then you type in DCHS Math Help, and that will take you to one of these people. Now notice I'm in one box, but there may be a whole bunch of other people that you don't know. That's okay. They can still answer your math questions. So just keep that in mind if you need extra assistance for anything. Alright, we're going to go back to our presentation, and we're talking about absolute value equations, and so definitely we need to know what an absolute value is. So you should have been introduced to it in middle school. An absolute value is the distance that a number is from 0. So if I take the absolute value, which are these little bars here on either side of that 6, and I ask myself, well, how far is 6 away from 0? The answer is 6 units. But also, if I do it for the absolute value of -6, how far is -6 away from 0? Well, it's in 6 units. So basically what it does is it takes distance is always positive, and it kind of prioritizes that. So whatever is going on in the parentheses, it's going to make it be positive. So that's what an absolute value is. So your goals for this lesson are that you can solve absolute value equations, justifying each step when necessary. And when we look at our standards, it kind of goes along with this standard where we have to explain our steps, so that's the justification. And when it's not in the standard itself, but kind of next to the standard, it says tasks are limited to linear, quadratic, piecewise. Absolute value is there, so you have to be able to construct an argument or be able to say this property of equality, that kind of thing, with an absolute value equation. But if you never worked an absolute value equation, you might not know how to solve this. So that's what we're learning today. All right, so here are the steps, and I highly recommend you write these down. You can pause the video as you go. But step 1 for solving an absolute value equation is to isolate the absolute value. And this may require a few steps. You want to get those bars by themselves. Step 2, check to see if the absolute value equals a negative number. If it does, then you pretty much go straight to the answer, no solution, because a positive number will never equal a negative number. Remember, absolute value is always going to give you a positive answer. Positive will never equal a negative number. So no solution would be the case there. Step 3, break the equation into 2 pieces. That's pretty much the only way to undo absolute value bars. There's no inverse operation for absolute value bars. When we break it into 2 pieces, one equation looks pretty much the same. It just loses the absolute value bars. And then the other equation that you write will get a set of parentheses and a negative out in front. And again, we're going to look at examples and look at these steps as we go. Step 4, solve both equations separately. Step 5, check your solutions. Especially early on, I recommend you checking your solutions, but it will allow you to catch some things that need to be thrown out, possibly, or do a no solution kind of idea. And this is very, very, very important. Never, ever, ever, never, ever, never, 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 ever, 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 never, never distribute across the absolute value symbols. Don't do it. It's bad. It may work sometimes, but it doesn't work all the time. So just don't do it. I'll show you how to do it. All right, so here we go. Step number 1. We're going to isolate the absolute value bars. But look, here's an absolute value bar, and here's an absolute value bar, and there's nothing else on the outside of those absolute value bars, so I don't have to isolate it. But look over here at number 2. See absolute value bars, but do you see this -5? I'm going to have to move that -5 before I do anything else. So I have to isolate my absolute value bars first before I do anything. So at number 1, I don't have to do that step. Don't have to isolate, it's already by itself. So here's step 2. Does it equal a negative number? It looks like that's a +7. So we are not having an easy time with this. We are going to have to keep going. We can't just say no solution on every single problem because there are some solutions. So here's step 3. We're going to break this up into 2 pieces. So I always draw arrows. And so the first piece has an n inside the absolute value bars. The bars go away, and then it equals 7. So the first one looks almost exactly the same. The second one, for my n, it gets some parentheses around it with a negative out in front. Equals 7. Now, right now, in this second equation, the one on the right, I don't really need those parentheses, but they're there in case there's more than one thing inside the absolute value bar. Now, for the left equation, it's already solved. For the right, this is really -1 times n. So I'm going to divide by -1. So n equals -7. So these 2 answers are the answer to my problem. Now we're going to check to make sure that our answer is correct. So I'm going to plug in 7 back into the problem. Is the absolute value of 7 7? Is 7 units away from 0? Yes, it checks, so that one's correct. Let's plug in -7. Is the absolute value of -7 7? Yes, it is. So that means that this one is correct. So we've taken our absolute value, we split it in 2. When you do that, you lose those absolute value symbols. You solve each equation, and then you should check. And if it doesn't work out, you throw out that answer. So let's look at number 2. Because I have that -5, I'm going to have to move it. And I move it using inverse or opposite operation. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. That means I've got the absolute value of p equals 14. These should, unless there's a 0 over there where there's a 14 in it, these should have 2 answers. So just keep that in mind. So we're going to split this into 2 parts. One of them does not have equal to bars. The other one gets parentheses and a negative. And then we solve. This one, already solved. This one we need to divide by -1, so p equals -14. Let's check. Is the absolute value of 14 equal to 14? Yes. Is the absolute value of -14 equal to 14? Yes. So we have 2 answers to our absolute value equation. Alright, I think we're ready to crank it up a notch, just a little bit. So here's 3 and 4. 4 is a little bit different than what we've looked at so far. 3 isn't too bad, but let's go ahead and look at, here's my absolute value bars. They are already isolated. But here comes step 2. Do you see how this is a negative number? Our answer is no solution. Because when will a positive number equal a negative number? When will that happen? Never. So because it's never, no solution is our answer. Now let's take a moment and see what happens if I work it. Maybe I didn't notice. Maybe wasn't paying attention. And I'm like, woohoo, split it in 2. W equals -13. Negative W equals -13. And I'm just going, right? Here I'm going to divide by -1. W equals 13. Well, here is where the check comes in handy. Does the absolute value of -13 equal -13? That's a positive 13. Does positive 13 equal negative 13? No. So you would throw that one out. That answer doesn't work. It doesn't check out. Well, how about this one? Is the absolute value of positive 13, does that equal negative 13? Again, we're looking at 13 equals negative 13. That's not true, so we'd have to throw that out. So if you throw out all your answers, that means there's no answer. That means it's no solution. So that's where the check kind of comes in behind and allows you to catch maybe a mistake that you didn't get ahead of time. All right, so let's look at 4. Number 4, my absolute value bars are by themselves. There is a W plus 2 inside. There's extra stuff inside, but notice that there's nothing kind of outside, hanging around outside those absolute value bars. All right, so does it equal a negative number? Nope, in this case it equals a positive 13, so we're good there. So now we're ready to split into 2. We have W plus 2 equals 13, and we have negative, and here's where the parentheses are really handy. Negative W plus 2 in parentheses equals 13, and then we're going to solve each one. So I'm going to subtract 2. W equals 11. That's one of my answers, and I will check it. On the second one, I'm going to distribute my negative 1. I'm going to add 2. Negative W equals 15 and divide by negative 1. So W equals negative 15. So I've got 2 answers, and I'm going to check them out. Now, some people fall into the trap that as soon as they get one answer, like 11, they think the other one is automatically negative 11. So don't fall into that trap. So let's look. Absolute value of 11 plus 2 is the absolute value of 13. Is the absolute value of 13 equal 13? Yes, it does. So that one works. All right, let's try negative 15. Absolute value of negative 15 plus 2, does it equal 13? Absolute value of negative 13 is 13. 13 equals 13? That's true. So both of them work. Now, if we had tried negative 11 plus 2 is negative 9. The absolute value of negative 9 is 9. 9 does not equal 13. So you can't just go based off of just changing the number to its opposite. Sometimes it occurs, but not always. All right, so here you have some you-try problems. So grab pencil and paper and try these problems. They look similar, but they're not. All right, you're back. And so we are going to isolate our absolute value. That means I need to move that 5. So absolute value of x equals 40. And then now I'm ready to break it down into x equals 40 and negative x equals 40. X equals 40 is my answer. I'm going to divide this one by negative 1, so x equals negative 40. Let's check. So the absolute value of 40 plus 5, 45. Well, the absolute value of 40 is 40. 40 plus 5 is 45. That is true. That works. For this one, the absolute value of negative 40 plus 5, does it equal 45? Well, that's 40 plus 5. Yep, that's 45. So both of them check out. Both of them are your answers. So in this case, one is the opposite of the other, but it doesn't always happen, so don't fall into that trap of, oh, it always happens, so I just have to find one. All right, here, my absolute value bars are isolated, so now I'm ready to split into x plus 5 equals 45, and negative x plus 5 equals 45, and then I'm going to subtract x equals 40. There's one answer. Now I'm going to distribute. I'm going to add 5. And then I'm going to divide by negative 1. So x equals negative 50. Now let's check those. Get that in there. All right, so absolute value of 40 plus 5 Well, that's the absolute value of 45. Does the absolute value of 45 equal 45? Yes, it does. All right, let's see about absolute value of negative 50 plus 5. Well, negative 50 plus 5 is negative 45. Absolute value of negative 45 equals 45, so that one checks out. Both of them check out. All right, we're going to crank her up another notch. All right, we're going to throw some extra stuff in there, but you're not going to do anything that's different. So you're going to look at your absolute values. They're isolated. Doesn't equal a negative number, so we're not going to go straight for no solution. So we're going to split 2t plus 3 equals 5, and then negative parentheses 2t plus 3 equals 5. I ran into my other problem space, but I'll probably erase that later. All right, let's solve. We're going to subtract 3. 2t equals 2, so t equals 1. There's one answer. And the next one I'm going to distribute, so I've got negative 2t minus 3 equals 5. I'm going to add 3, and then I'm going to divide by negative 2, so t equals negative 4. So I have two answers. I'm going to check. So 2 times 1 plus 3 inside my absolute value bars. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 plus 3 is 5. Absolute value of 5 is 5. Check. 2 times negative 4 plus 3. Does it equal 5? 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. Negative 8 plus 3 is negative 5. The absolute value of negative 5 equals 5. So that one checks out too. So we're still doing the same step. It got a little bit more complicated because there's extra stuff inside the absolute value bars, but we're still just solving equations. We're just having to follow those steps that I gave you. So step 1, isolate the absolute value bars. Step 2, does it equal a negative? Step 3, split it into 2 different equations. Step 4, solve each one of them separately. Step 5, you should check. Alright, I'm going to do a little bit of erasing just so I have some space. And let's look at number 6. Absolute value bars by themselves. So now we're ready to split. 4x plus 5 equals 21. Negative 4x plus 5 equals 21. And then we're going to solve each one. 4x equals 16. Divide by 4. X equals 4. And then over here, negative 4x minus 5 equals 21. Add 5. Negative 4x equals 26, and then I'm going to divide by negative 4. So x equals negative 13 over 2. Now, that one's a fraction, so some people don't like it, but we'll see what happens. Alright, so let's plug in 4. Absolute value of 4 times 4 plus 5. And that's 16. 16 plus 5 is 21. Absolute value of 21 is 21. I forgot my equal sign. There we go. So that one works. Alright, and then this absolute value of 4 times negative 13 over 2. If you want to change that to a decimal, you can. You can stick it in a calculator too. So that ends up being that negative 26 plus 5, which is negative 21. Absolute value negative 21 equals 21. So that works out as well. Alright. Let's see what else we're going to do. I think we're going to put some stuff on the outside. Oh, not number 7, but ooh, look at number 8. I really like things like number 8. Hint, hint, hint. I really like ones like number 8. So let's look at number 7. I'm not going to do anything different. My absolute value bars are by themselves. So go ahead and split it up. Don't forget the second one gets parentheses and a negative. Oops, I lost my negative. That happens a lot, so watch out for that. So negative 3f plus 4 equals 5. And then we're going to solve. Subtract 4. negative 3f equals 1, divide by negative 3, f is negative 1/3. And then for this other one, I'm going to distribute, so I'm going to get 3f minus 4 equals 5. I'm going to add 4. 3f equals 9, divide by 3, f equals 3. So I've got two answers. And then you can check. Negative 3 times negative 1/3 plus 4. So negative 3 times negative 1/3 is 1. So 1 plus 4 is 5. The absolute value of 5 is 5. So that one's going to check out. Let's plug this other one in. Negative 3 times 3 plus 4. Negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. Negative 9 plus 4, that's going to be negative 5. Absolute value of negative 5 is 5. So this whole check thing, I've been writing it down. I don't require the check, but I do expect that if it like equals a negative number and you give me two answers, if you didn't check it, then you're going to think that those are the two answers instead of no solution. So if you just instead of writing, like I think it was problem number 3, write w equals 13 and w equals negative 13, and you're saying those are your answers, and they're not really, it's supposed to be no solution, I'm going to know that you didn't check. Okay, let's look at 8. I love 8. 8 is my favorite. I love 8. I love problems like 8 because my absolute values are not by themselves. So think of it like your absolute value is replaced with x. That's what I would do first. Okay. Now, when you would solve this, what would you do? Wouldn't you add 10 and then divide by 3? Okay, those would be your steps. So I want you to treat it the same way. Some of you are going to distribute and try to do this. And like I said earlier, it may work once or twice, but it will not work every single time. So you can't think that you can distribute. No distributing. None. Don't you do it. That's like dividing by fractions, and I call you out on it. Like, we don't divide by fractions. We don't distribute over absolute value signs. No, 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 no. We don't do it. We just don't. So no distributing over absolute value signs here. Absolutely not. Instead, we're going to do our steps here. Add 10, 3 times absolute value of c minus 2 equals 21. And then because there's multiply holding those together, I'm going to divide both sides by 3. The 3 and the divide by 3 cancel, leaving absolute value of c minus 2 equals 7. Now my absolute value bars are by themselves. There's nothing outside them. Now I can split it up into c minus 2 equals 7 and negative c minus 2 equals negative 7. I'm going to add 2. C equals 9. I'm going to distribute. I'm going to subtract 2. Negative c equals negative 9, so divide by negative 1, c equals 9. Did I get the same answer? Hang on a second. Oh, what did I do here? I made a mistake. I put a negative on this side too. That's okay, we can fix it real quick. Our operations are still going to be the same. I don't know why I picked up a negative. Subtract 2. This is 5. Divide by negative 1. That's negative 5. There we go. Fixed it. Easy. Easy fix. Because I made a mistake. But you have to figure out where your mistake is. So, let's check. Let's plug in 9 back in here. Let's plug it here. 9 minus 2 is 7. The absolute value of 7 is 7. That works. Negative 5 minus 2 is negative 7. The absolute value of negative 7 is also 7. But you can plug them back in here to make sure that you've got the whole entire thing right. And, that might be something worth doing, especially if you're trying to do some sort of distribution over absolute values, which you should never do. Never, ever, ever. Alright, you try. Alright, let's look at C. How many of you tried to distribute after I just said don't do it? Hopefully you didn't. Hopefully instead you say, I'm multiplying by 4, I'm going to divide by 4 on both sides. And then I've got the absolute value of 3x plus 2 equals 1. Make sure you're writing your absolute values until you do the split. After the split, you don't need them anymore. 3x plus 2 equals 1. Negative 3x plus 2 equals 1. I'm going to subtract 2, so 3x equals negative 1, divide by 3, x equals negative 1/3. Distribute here by negative 1, I'm going to add 2, don't add 1, I said 1 and wrote 1. Negative 3x equals 3, divide by negative 3, x equals negative 1. So there are my two answers. Alright, let's look at D. We got to isolate our absolute value. So there's the absolute value. This needs to move. I'm going to subtract it. So absolute value of 2x minus 3 equals 7. Now we can split it up. 2x minus 3 equals 7. Negative 2x minus 3 equals 7. I'm going to add 3. 2x equals 10. Divide by 2. X equals 5. And then I'm going to distribute over here. Subtract 3. Divide by negative 2. X equals negative 2. Okay, so, and then you of course could go back and check and see how you were doing. But hopefully I'm your check right now. You could go back and check later. Alright, Caleb is solving the following equation for x. Provide a justification for each step of Caleb's solution process. So we have to figure out what Caleb did. So we're given our first equation, and then we have to figure out how they get from this step to this step. So what's missing? What changed? See, my absolute value, 3x minus 7, is still there. That didn't change. But what happened was this 2 moved. And how do you divide, or I'm going to tell you. You divide by 2. How do you move it? Divide by 2. So because I divide by 2 on both sides, that is the division property of equality. Some of you need to go back and look at your properties of equality. Alright, we split this into two equations. So that justification, we're just going to write split in 2 to remove absolute value. That's the only way you can do that. Alright, now, what happened in the next one? Now, there is a difference in what I've been doing. Notice that these pieces are the same, and these pieces are opposites. So, that may have been where that negative 7 came from earlier. There are two ways to rewrite, to split your equations. The way that I have been teaching you is one way to do it. This is another way where you keep what's in the absolute value, you change the sign on these pieces. I have taught it both ways. The way that I just showed you in problems 1 through 8 in your example problems are the ways, or the way that seems to stick with most of my students. They seem to get that a lot better than this just changing the sign on what's on the other side of the equal sign. If you like this way better, great, go for it, okay? But just know that when I do examples, I'm probably going to do the parentheses with the negative out in front of it. doesn't mean that you're wrong, just means that you did it a little bit different of a way. But we should still be able to get the same answer. The reason why it's done this way is because to solve for x, you would add 7 to both sides in both problems. So you have the repeating rule where you're doing the same thing for both equations. So that is in this case, the addition property of equality. In the way that we did it, we had to distribute, and we had to do some different things for each equation. So that's the reason why they're doing it here. For the next step, looks like we're going to divide by 3 for both of them to get x by itself, so that would be the division property of equality. All right, I think the next one is the last one. You're going to be doing problem number 10 on your own. Do you agree with the solutions to the problem below? If you agree, show that the answers are correct by checking. If you disagree, explain why and give the correct solutions. All right, let's say you agree. So we're going to check. So here I have 25 minus 5 equals 20. In my absolute values, I have 25 minus 5. And that's the absolute value of 20 equals 20. That checks. Let's try the negative 25. Minus 5 equals 20. Negative 25 minus 5 is negative 30. Negative 30 in absolute value is 30. Does 30 equal 20? It does not. So that means that this is correct, but not this one. So let's look at, because they're obviously not correct, we should disagree. Let's explain why. So let's look at the work. Oh, look, they did this and moved that over. And that happens a lot in my class. People try to find shortcuts. They skip the, hey, I need to break this into 2 equations and then solve. So that's what happened. So let's look. X minus 5 and my absolute value bars equals 20. If the board wants to participate, there we go. And then we're going to split that into x minus 5 equals 20 and negative x minus 5 equals 20. Add 5. Here's my 25. So that's why it works, because it is a solution. But here, negative x plus 5 equals 20. Subtract 5, negative x equals 15, divide by negative 1, x is negative 15. That's why the negative 25 didn't work. All right, so some things to watch out for. Number 1, you should probably end up with 2 answers. Number 2, be very careful. Never distribute across a set of absolute value bars. Number 3, just because you end up with one answer, like x equals 25, does not mean that the other answer is automatically x equals negative 25. It could be, but don't think that you can find a shortcut. Number 4, make sure that you are splitting into 2 equations. That's really important. That's what this example is showing. They tried to keep everything together and then just change the answer to its opposite at the end. So there are no shortcuts. Follow the steps that I've given you. Write them down if you haven't already, because remember, your test is going to be open note, and you can go back and look at those. You can go back and look at example problems, but you can't go back and watch the video, I guess. Not while you're taking a test. It's not going to work out. All right, that's it. Next week, we will do absolute value inequality, so we'll get another taste of this before we get into our test. Make sure you're working on homework 2. It is due. It opens on Friday, and then it's due Sunday night, so that you have a couple of days in case there's technical difficulties to get it turned in. Email me if you have any questions. I'm kind of busy on Friday, so I'm not going to be able to do Google Meet on homework 2 questions, but if you email me, I should be able to get back to you pretty quickly. All right, have a wonderful weekend, and those of you in the Google Meets, I really enjoy getting to see you guys, so thank you for participating and thank you for signing in and being with me. I really appreciate it. All right, have a good weekend, guys. Bye.